listen to my story and listen to it well. I'll tell you of a great man who served his country well. His name was Daniel Boone, and he wore a coonskin hat, and his clothes were made of buckskin. Now what do you think of that? Dan was born in Pennsylvania in 1734, in colony days before the Revolutionary War. He was famous as a hunter while he was still a boy, and the hours he spent in the forest, they were his greatest joy. Did you hear that? That was Daniel Boone with his long rifle out hunting a bear. Listen. He got him. Daniel Boone shot that bear. That was when Daniel was only 15 years old. Yes, Daniel Boone was the greatest hunter and explorer this country ever had. Now, sometimes Dan hunted bears. And sometimes wildcats. And other times the timber wolf. Daniel Boone loved to explore, too, and he was one of the first pioneers to see the Blue Ridge Mountains and the Bluegrass region of Kentucky. Oh, Daniel knew the forest, he knew the forest well, the mountains and the rivers and where the animals dwell. He was handy with a rifle and with a hunting knife, and he loved the open spaces, the cleanest kind of life. Of course, there were other dangers in the forest in those days besides wild animals. There were Indians, and one day when Daniel was exploring a cut in the mountains where Kentucky, Virginia, and Tennessee meet, an area known as Cumberland Gap, he knew there were Indians ahead, unfriendly Indians. Quickly, Daniel turned around and silently he cut back on his own trail, but the Indians were behind him, too. Dan was surrounded. Dan fought like a wildcat, but the odds were just too great. He was captured and taken to the Indians' camp. The Indians knew Daniel's reputation, and they tied him to a tree post to prevent his escape. That night, when the Indians were asleep, Dan found a sharp piece of bark right back of where his hands were tied. Slowly and painfully, he rubbed the leather cord against the bark until at last he was free. Then, as quiet as a cat, he escaped. The Indians followed, but Daniel covered ground so fast that he left their swiftest runners behind. He covered 160 miles on foot in 4 days, and he met his friends, settlers from back east at Cumberland Gap. During the Revolutionary War, Dan was a major in the American Army, and his great knowledge of forestry and wood lore came in handy when he fought the British and the Indians on the British side. But he was friendly to many Indians because Daniel was a fair man to red men and to white, and he never used his rifle unless he had to fight. He didn't like big cities, he kept on moving west, and he helped to build our country and tame the wilderness. When the Revolutionary War was over, Dan kept heading west until he made his final home in Missouri. There he would sit under a tree during the day, and settlers and Indians came to him with their problems, for he was a man of great justice and simple democracy. His tree became famous as Boone's Judgment Tree. Often Dan sat under it and remembered his old battles and adventures, and he would fondly dream of his hunting days when he hunted the big bear and the savage wildcat and the wild timber wolf. And now you've heard my story, there is no more to tell. The story of Daniel Boone, who served his country well. His clothes were made of buckskin and he wore a coonskin hat. A democratic pioneer, I hope you'll remember that.
Not so long ago, a little boy sat by the window and looked up into the sky. The wishing star was shining brightly. That afternoon, the little boy had seen a band marching down the street with all the musical instruments playing a happy melody. He stared at the wishing star, sighed, and said,
"Oh, wishing star, I wish I had a piccolo."
I wish I had a piccolo, how happy I would be. I'd go dee-dee-dee-dee, dee-dee-dee-dee, dee-dee-dee-dee-dee. A teeny tiny piccolo would mean so much to me. I'd go dee-dee-dee-dee, dee-dee-dee-dee, dee-dee-dee-dee-dee. Although it's very small, I know the notes are very high. I'll make believe that I can talk to the birds up in the sky. I wish I had a piccolo, how happy I would be. I'd go dee-dee-dee-dee, dee-dee-dee-dee, dee-dee-dee-dee.
The wishing star said,
"Are you sure you wish you had a piccolo?"
The little boy thought for a moment and answered,
Well, now, maybe I wish I had a big bass drum.
I wish I had a big bass drum, how happy I would be. I'd go boom, 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 boom. A thumpity-thumpity big bass drum would mean so much to me. I'd go boom, 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 boom. I'd go boom, 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 boom.
Yes, come to think of it, I do wish I had a big bass drum.
The wishing star said,
Are you absolutely sure you wish you had a big bass drum?
The little boy thought some more and answered,
Well, now, maybe I wish I had a slide trombone.
I wish I had a slide trombone, how happy I would be. I'd go down, down, down. A slippery, zippery slide trombone would mean so much to me. I'd go down, down, down.
I'd be out front in the big parade, I'm very sure of that.
If someone else should march in front, my slide would bump his hat. I wish I had a slide trombone, how happy I would be. I'd go down, down, down.
Are you sure about that last wish for the slide trombone?
The little boy thought a while longer and said,
Well, now, maybe I wish I had a bugle.
I wish I had a bugle, how happy I would be. I'd go toot-toot-toot-toot-toot-toot-toot-toot-toot-toot. A roodly-toodly bugle would mean so much to me. I'd go toot-toot-toot-toot-toot-toot-toot-toot-toot. I'd learn all the bugle calls and then I'd make a rule to wake up all the girls and boys so they won't be late for school. I wish I had a bugle, how happy I would be. I'd go toot-toot-toot-toot-toot-toot-toot-toot-toot-toot.
The wishing star said,
Are you sure you wish you had a bugle?
The little boy thought, and then he said,
Well, now, maybe I wish I had a big bass horn.
I wish I had a big bass horn, how happy I would be. I'd go oompa, 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 pa, pa, oomp. An oompity-doompity big bass horn would mean so much to me. I'd go oompa, 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 pa, pa, oomp.
The wishing star winked an eye and said,
Now, are you absolutely, positively certain that you wish you had a big bass horn?
Well, now, I guess what I'd like most of all is to leave the band. And for that, I need a baton. So I suppose what I really wish I had is a big baton.
I wish I had a big baton, how happy I would be. I'd spin it round and round and round so all the folks could see. A whirly, twirly big baton would mean so much to me. I'd twirl it round my head and then I'd twirl it round my knees. I'd throw it up and catch it.
Before it touched the ground, I'd be in front of the big parade or marching through the town. I wish I had a big baton, 'cause I would look so grand, and everyone would know that I'm the leader of the band.
On his next birthday, the little boy's wish came true.
Hop, 2, 3, 4, hop, 2, 3, 4, forward, march!
Now, bright one morning, Peter opened the gate and went out into the big green meadow. On a branch of a big tree sat a little bird, Peter's friend. All is quiet, chirped the bird gaily. Just then, a duck came waddling round. She was glad that Peter hadn't closed the gate and decided to take a nice swim in the deep pond in the meadow. They argued and argued. The duck swimming in the pond, the little bird hopping along the shore. Suddenly, something caught Peter's attention. He noticed a cat crawling through the grass. Oh, look out! Shouted Peter, and the bird immediately flew up into the tree. While the duck quacked angrily at the cat, Grandfather came out. He was angry because Peter had gone into the meadow. It's a dangerous place. If a wolf should come out of the forest, then what would you do? Peter paid no attention to his grandfather's words. Boys like him are not afraid of wolves. But Grandfather took Peter by the hand, led him home, and locked the gate. Now, no sooner had Peter gone than a big gray wolf did come out of the forest. In a twinkling, the cat climbed up the tree. The duck quacked, and in her excitement, jumped out of the pond. But no matter how hard the duck tried to run, she couldn't escape the wolf. He was getting nearer, nearer, catching up with her. And then he got her, and with one gulp, swallowed her. In the meantime, Peter, without the slightest fear, stood behind the closed gate, watching all that was going on. He ran home, got a strong rope, and climbed up the high stone wall. One of the branches of the tree round which the wolf was walking stretched out over the wall. Grabbing hold of the branch, Peter lightly climbed over onto the tree. Peter said to the bird, "Fly down and circle round the wolf's head. Only take care that he doesn't catch you." The bird almost touched the wolf's head with his wings. while the wolf snapped angrily at him from this side and that. How the bird worried the wolf, and how the wolf wanted to catch him. But the bird was clever, and the wolf simply couldn't do anything about it. Meanwhile, Peter made a lasso, and carefully letting it down, caught the wolf by the tail and pulled with all his might. Feeling himself caught, the wolf began to jump wildly, trying to get loose. But Peter had tied the other end of the rope to the tree. And the wolf's jumping only made the rope round his tail tighter. Just then, the hunters came out of the woods. Following the wolf's trail and shooting as they went. But Peter, sitting in the tree, said, "Don't shoot. Birdie and I have caught the wolf. Now help us to take him to the zoo." Imagine the triumphant procession. Peter at the head. After him, the hunters leading the wolf. And winding up the procession, Grandfather and the cat.
In Spain, in the town of Carambasvel, lived the bravest matador of them all. His name was Juan Pablo Garcia Miguel. He was 3 feet and 2 inches tall. When night cast a cloak o'er Carambasvel, Juan Pablo would run to his bed. But he'd never dream of a big ice cream hill. He would dream of the bullfight instead.
Señoras y señores, it is time for the biggest bullfight of the year. Today, we have the biggest bull ever to fight, El Toro Diablo, the devil bull. And fighting him, the only matador in all of Spain who is brave enough to enter the bull ring with Diablo, Juan Pablo Garcia Miguel. And here comes the band. And now for the big fight, pitting El Toro Diablo, weight 2,452 pounds, 6 feet 8 inches tall, if you do not count his horns, which are 3 feet long, and the brave matador, Juan Pablo Garcia Miguel, weighing 53 pounds, 3 feet 2 inches tall, if you do not count the act, which is 4 inches high. The fight will commence after the March of the Toreador. Señores y señores, it is time to start the big fight. Here comes El Toro Diablo. And now, here comes Juan Pablo, carrying only a red cloak and his wooden sword.
Poor Pablo, poor Juan Pablo, at full fighting he must be good. For there he is alone with the great big bull, and his sword is made of wood.
And now, El Toro rushes Juan Pablo. Ah, what form, what grace! Juan Pablo steps aside as El Toro rushes by. Uh-oh, here he comes again. Caramba! Juan Pablo stood his ground, and the bull barely missed him. What bravery! What skill! And here comes the bull again. El Toro seems to be tiring. Here he comes. And boys and girls, Juan Pablo has ignored his sword and thrown the bull to the ground with his bare hands. And El Toro Diablo, the biggest bull ever to enter the bull ring, is just lying there. He is afraid to get up. And now, Juan Pablo pulls him by his horns and rides the bull around the ring. Hola! Strike up the band!
In Spain, in the town of Caramba, lived the bravest matador of them all. His name was Juan Pablo Garcia Miguel. He was 3 feet and 2 inches tall. When night cast the cloak of Caramba, Juan Pablo would run to his bed. But he'd never dream of a big ice cream hill. He would dream of a bullfight instead.
Do you recognize that music? That's right. It was the trumpet, the king's trumpet. And here's a wonderful story about that music. In a faraway land, there one time lived a shepherd king who owned many flocks and had many shepherds who tended sheep for him. One day, this king wanted to call all of the shepherds together. So he sent a runner for them. When they arrived, the king spoke to them and said, "Pay heed, ye shepherds. Henceforth, when I call ye, I will no longer send a runner. For look, I have fashioned for myself an instrument made from the horn of a ram. With it I can make many tones. So hark, shepherds. If you should hear me playing this, come home at once. This instrument we will call a shofar." Soon, each shepherd made his own shofar, and each made up his own call. They all made a set of calls so they could speak to each other. And while the sheep grazed, one could often hear the call of the shofar echoing from hilltop to hilltop. Later, when the king became mighty, he had an army, and the shofar was used to call men to war. As time went on, men learned to work with metals. Soon, they found that horns could be made of brass and gold and silver. These horns could play many more tones than could the ram horn. So the kings had trumpets made to play their special calls. They also found that if they made a trumpet long, they played low notes like this. And when they made the trumpet short, they played high notes like this.
Now, in England, there lived a king named Richard the Lionhearted. And when he made ready to go forth with his army of knights, he would call his band of trumpeters and say, "Ho, master of the trumpet, sound off." And the master of the trumpet would reply, "Aye, my lord." "Trumpeters, prepare. Sound the tucket." Then, as the king and his knights marched into the great cathedral for prayer, the trumpets could be heard playing music like this. Early in the 18th century, a wise musician said, "We need many trumpets because each one plays only a few notes." Now, let me see. If I make a trumpet with a piece of metal that moves up and down in a pipe and put a hole in the side of that piece of metal, I can use it to connect the different pipes to my trumpet. When I push it down, air will go through a long pipe and make a low sound. And when I let go, the air will go through a short pipe and make a high sound. Now, he had a trumpet with a valve that played many tones. Later, trumpet makers built a trumpet and put 3 valves in it. Musicians found that they could play all of the notes in the scale. One day, a musician brought his trumpet to the king and said, "Sire, I present to you a new invention, a 3-valve trumpet." The king looked at the instrument curiously and said to the musician, "Play that instrument, musician, and let me hear what it can do." So the musician raised the trumpet to his lips and played a tune like this. The king was very pleased, and the musician was greatly rewarded.